Good morning or afternoon. This is just the notes on the What is Biology slide. Again, for the distance learners or anybody else that is reviewing or just trying to catch up, you're welcome to watch this or just the plain PowerPoint that is also in the folder, the resources folder for Chapter 1. So we started out, again, just talking about what is biology? What are we studying? What is it? And one of the tools that I want you to be able to use, and that we'll be using frequently with some of the terminology in class, is the ability to break terms in half and kind of look at the roots and figure out what they mean. So, for instance, with biology, if we take off the ology part, that just means study of. So whether you're doing biology or psychology or sociology, you're studying something. So what is the bio part? What does that mean? What are we studying? Well, in this case, bio means life or living things. So what is biology? Biology is the study of life and living organisms. And one of my goals with this class is as we look at various topics, so some of the biology may be about us as humans and how our body works and digestive process or just different things with our immune system. Or we may be looking at things out in nature with flowers and trees, or with a pond environment. What is the biology of that? But in all those cases, I want to draw it back to us. So what is the impact to us personally or as a group here living in Monticello? So hopefully we can make connection with everything we draw on or every topic we deal with, because we're a living thing, and we can make some connection to other living things, no matter how closely related to us or not they might be. The other part I wanted to introduce today is also then, if we're studying living things, what are characteristics of living things? So what are things that we look at to judge, to decide if something is alive or not? Should it be part of the study of biology? And there's a diagram in the folder, once again, that you can look at, refer to now, or just go through the list I'm going to give you. Or there's a worksheet that we'll do also that's downloadable, where you may want to refer to some things because it has a little more detail or some terms that you may see on a worksheet that's coming up here. So we have a textbook, and I will give you something. We'll use the textbook a little bit, but we're getting a new textbook that's more digital friendly. So in the meantime, when we use things out of our current textbook, I'm going to scan them and I'm going to give them to you in a digital format, just so that we don't have to handle a book or drag around a book. So anyway, the diagram that's in the folder, the living characteristics diagram, is just a scan from our textbook. But here's a summary of the list of that scan. So it's saying, so if something's going to be categorized as living, it has these 8 qualities. Number one, we know it has some DNA. We know DNA is the genetic code of all living things. It gives them their blueprint or their instructions for life. Number two, that organism has the ability to grow, which is probably going to be some sort of measurable size things, or develop, where it may look different or be different. It may not be measurable difference, but it may just have a different appearance. We talked about in class, with sports, if you grow, if your coach sees you and say, "Hey, you really grew," he's probably talking about you weigh more, or you're taller, or something that's different about your physique. Whereas if the coach says, "Hey, you really developed," you're maybe talking about a skill. You developed a better jump shot. You developed a better kick, or swing, or pitch, or catch. So those are all developmental things that may not be physically measurable, like a growth is. But living things can do one or the other, or both. 3, respond to the environment. So if there's something that changes, a stimulus, they can respond. So if I put my hand on something hot, my hand's going to pull away so I don't burn myself. I'm going to respond to that. Fourthly, they can reproduce. They can produce offspring to sustain their population or to build a population, but they can create the next generation. 5, maintain a stable internal environment. A term that goes hand in hand with that, that we'll see probably a couple more times throughout the year, is the term homeostasis, if you haven't heard that before. Like biology, we can use the tool of dissecting it. So we have stasis and homeo. Stasis, the suffix, is just short for status, or your condition. Okay, so what is your current status? What's your condition right now? Is the stasis part. Homeo, or homo in some cases, means the same. So if you're able to maintain a stable environment, you can keep your environment the same. okay, which means homeostasis, keeping the same state, something constant. So for us, and again, thinking of COVID that we're dealing with, a lot of places require you to do a temperature check to make sure that you're not running a fever because our body has a homeostasis for temperature. That's about 98.6. That we know our body should be there if we are healthy and don't have any infections going on. And if we get an infection or illness, oftentimes our homeostasis will change and our temperature will elevate, which is an indicator that, again, we've got some sort of illness going on. 6, living things can use materials and or energy. Oftentimes we refer to that as having metabolism. You hear that term frequently, like with diet and exercise, that somebody may do a certain type of exercise to increase their metabolism so that they can burn more calories and maybe lose some weight. But anyway, they're using energy. 7, something is made of cells. If it's alive, we know that the basic structure of living things is to have cells, just like we have skin cells and bone cells and muscle cells. Every living thing has some sort of cell structure. And then lastly, organisms that are living typically have the tendency to evolve or change. So if there's something that they need to adapt to, and the key thing there is over time, over generations. So an individual isn't going to evolve. An individual will develop, okay, but a population of things over generations can evolve or change over that period of time. And we see that pretty consistently with living things, that they do that. So when we compare what they look like today to 200 years ago, there's probably going to be some changes. Some of them may be real subtle, or some of them may be real drastic, but they've adapted to something. So my challenge is I made up this little thingy-majig. Hope I can get that on the camera. And my question to class was, is this alive? So what I made up is there's a candle that I glued on top of a cork that's on top of a Dixie cup with a stir stick running through it. And then I've got some wooden clothespin holders that are kind of the legs that keep it propped up. And so I said, is this alive? And I think probably what you would say too is, no, it's not. This is just a bunch of stuff that I stuck together and put a little face on it. But no, it's certainly not a living thing. And I challenged them, I said, with this. So let me do one thing here. Oops. All right, so I lit my candle. So I said, let's look at our criteria again and see if we can prove or disprove that this is a living thing. So number 1, does it have any DNA? Well, yes, it actually does. The cork, obviously, up on top here, used to be from a tree plant material. Same with the wood that's in the clothespins. And if we could have some sophisticated equipment, we could probably extract some fragments of DNA still from some of those old cells that are in there. So it probably has some DNA. Does it grow and or develop? Well, yeah, the flame could grow. If we had more oxygen in the room, we would probably see a bigger flame. The candle is going to melt some and probably shrink and develop and change. So it can have some growth or development. Does it respond to the environment? If I wave my hand by it, yeah, if I disturb the air, it flickers back and forth. That's a response to the airflow that's around it. Can it reproduce? Well, yeah, I could pass the fire to something else, and now I have a new fire, so it reproduced. The candle may drip. I may get some little wax droplets, and you may say, well, those are almost like little baby candles, so there's a reproduction ability of it. Does it maintain a stable environment? So if I leave this undisturbed, and you'll breathe on it, try not to, that candle is pretty consistent. Okay, so as long as it has the same oxygen, same airflow, it has kind of a homeostasis, just a normal size to that candle, to that flame. Does it use materials and energy? Yeah, it's burning the wick. It's using materials. It's producing energy. It's breathing. It's consuming oxygen to produce the flame. I've got some heat. I can feel that energy. We can see the light. That's energy. So it has metabolism. Is it made of cells? Again, yes, going back to that wood and that cork, if we could take a small sliver of it, put it on a microscope, we'd see some cells. And will it evolve or change over time? Again, if we give it a long enough time, this flame will burn out, the candle will shorten, and we'll see some change or adaptation. Or again, if we put more carbon dioxide in the room, the flame will get lower. If we put more oxygen in the room, the flame will get bigger, so it can evolve or adapt to maybe different air quality conditions. So we went through the list and we said, hey, we can kind of say yes to all those questions. So back to the original question. So does that make this a living thing? And no, it doesn't. Like I said, we still can use common sense. We're going to use some scientific criteria to make judgments on things, but there's also kind of the eyeball test of just using common sense and saying, no, this is not a living thing. Okay. But as we move forward, we want to keep track of this list that we have here, because we will use this in various aspects to look at things. So looking at reproduction as just a topic. So how do things reproduce, asexually or sexually? We'll do a unit that deals with cells. Get out our microscopes and look at different cell structures to see that there are different cells. Whether we're looking at animals or plants, they have the same structure. We'll certainly talk later this year about the genetic code and DNA. What is that stuff? How does it have a code? So all this stuff are topics that we'll deal with, that all living things should have some capability of. But we also have to use common sense to say, no, this little makeshift model was not a living thing. All right, so that is it. Like I said, along with that, then for tomorrow there will be a worksheet again that I will. It's not. It will be available shortly if it isn't already up on the site as far as downloadable. That has you look at these living characteristics that go along with this presentation. All right, thank you, and we'll see you again soon.